We are hoping for a great battle today, and just to make a point that we can actually see Wout van Aert on the left-hand side of the screen as you look, in the yellow kit, and he's on the second row. And we were watching some of the pictures before we came live on air, and it looked like he missed his call-up. So by the time, there's basically a rule. If you miss your call-up, as soon as you arrive, you can then go get called up, or you can go to the back. But yeah, they tried to share it with him, but he said, no, I missed it, so he'll stay on the second row.
The riders are under orders here in the exact cross. The Zilvermeer crossing mall, and we agree we are go, we are off and racing. Wout van Aert on the left in the yellow. Can he move himself up from that second row? Van der Poel goes right, has a glance across, but it's Vincent Bastans gets a great start. So does Quentin Hermans in the blue of Alpecin de Koning. It's Van der Poel that leads out, with Wout van Aert has moved himself right up to the front, so that missing the start didn't really matter there, did it?
No, I think the pressure for Vinny Bastans, though, was like extreme, isn't it? This is going to be the best start of your life. Think junior boy start, and then you'll get out of the way for Wout. I mean, they are good friends, they know each other, but yeah. But it's given him a great start, and he's now into fourth or fifth spot, equal fourth spot, going into this section, which is the section that would cause loads of trouble. If you're not in the first two, you don't get to ride it. And so, yeah, it's great for Vinny as well, even though he's probably going to pay for that at the end of the lap.
Mathieu van der Poel leading out on the first lap, and this is we've seen this traditionally throughout his 150 victories as a pro, but the shock and awe tactic, just go off the start line like a rocket ship, and then see who's left.
Yeah, and you have to all crash there.
It's all man down. Just you can see, just had to bunny hop that point there. Ouch. He's gone down really heavy there, unfortunately. That's Joachim van Vleuten. He just looked like he caught, almost looked like a root or something there.
Yeah, and when it's on this kind of course, on the sections, in the woody sections, they are very much single track, and so you really have to we're going to watch it again. He's bunny hopping that tree lump, but he didn't manage to land it very well, and then he stays in one place so everybody can come around him. But it's just what happens at the start. These things, there are 60 odd riders in the race, so these things can happen in the very first section, and already these two riders are trying to establish themselves at the front of the race.
Yeah, indeed. Van der Poel looks back and he'll see the face of his arch nemesis Wout van Aert, who's just latched himself onto the wheel. His teammate Quentin Hermans, though, coming across with Vincent Bastans, who was in front of Wout van Aert, and that's again the pressure, as Helen Wyman was saying, of being in front of Wout van Aert on the start. You don't want to miss a pedal or anything like that on the start and delay him.
Yeah, that would be an absolute disaster, wouldn't it? Matthew would regularly go to the front of the race, smashes out a couple of laps, and then ride his own race. But in this battle, this is the first time that they've met this year, and neither of them really knows how strong the other riders are, because they've both won their races, so they've both beaten all the other competition around them. So this is a race where you can use power. This is a race where you can use technique in certain sections, but there are really long sections where it will be group riding, and so you can't just go to the front and smash it out. So you're going to have to see how they assess each other on the first couple of laps, and then see what they're capable of, and see what the other riders around them are capable of, and seeing if they can get in the mix and mess it up a bit for either of these two riders.
Yeah, Quentin Hermans up there. It's good to see Quentin Hermans back in. Can Wout van Aert ride this section? Look at that. Beautifully done. Van der Poel does the same. Hermans does the same. Van der Poel has to get off and run. The power to get up that dune there is something to behold.
Yeah, and I mean, you see stuff like this, that the back wheel starts to slide and Wout doesn't get off, even though that's probably the best thing that he should do in that situation. But because he's already entrapped Van der Poel, it doesn't matter how slow he rides at that point.
It's good to see Quentin Hermans back in here, and I know he's got as well designs on a big road career. Just 14 race starts last year for Quentin Hermans, so he's had one start so far this season. So the man in blue just at the left of your picture as you look at it there. And it's a for me, Quentin Hermans, it's one of those riders as well. Just feels like it should stick with a good cross program. I know the draw of the road and everything is right there, but it is good to see him back in and straight away 2 races in back here, up in 3rd spot.
Yeah, and the bonus is that there's a rolling ranking for cyclocross.
Big gap.
Yeah, Wout had a bit of an issue there, so he wasn't able to ride that sand section, and so these are the things that go wrong in sand. You make one mistake, you can lose 10 seconds really easily. Because sand slows you down so much, it's really important to keep momentum in sand all the time, and you need to jump off before you lose that momentum. But these guys are trying to ride everything, and so they don't even think they're going to have to get off for this. They're just smashing through it until they make a mistake.
What's been interesting the last couple of weeks is the post-race interviews with, the likes of Tom Pidcock and the other riders, and sometimes the interviewers and other people are surprised how quickly the Wout van Aerts, the Mathieu van der Poels and the Tom Pidcocks find their groove in cross. Tom was saying, I've been on the cross bike a couple of times this week, and you'll see Wout van Aert playing in the sand or out in the woods, and Mathieu van der Poel doing the same. But that just shows they've grown up doing this, and these two in particular changed the sport completely. I've been reading a lot of interviews this week with the likes of Rob Peters and Nils Albert. When Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel came into cross as elites, as very, very young riders, they just changed the sport completely. And the sort of old guard knew their days were done, their days were numbered. Going to reach this level. Yeah,
they are the Van Empel and Puk Peters of the women's racing. They are the 2 riders that have grown up through the sport. Before them, there was an era with Lars Boom, Niels Albert and Zdenek Stibar, and they brought the sport on again in that level. And then these 2 have just got this ridiculous skill. It's just insane. But, Marty, you should also not always believe when they say they haven't really ridden their cross bikes much.
Yeah, there is that as well.
I mean, to be fair to these guys, Mathieu van der Poel has the most incredible bike riding skills in the entire planet. So, yeah, okay. Wout van Aert, incredibly skillful, obviously, in order to race against Mathieu and beat him. But he's also got this incredible power. And the 2 of them are very different way that they ride, but they are very much equally matched, and they will battle till the very bitter end. And nobody gives up on anything between these 2, and that's what drives the sport forward.
The 2016 finish between these 2, and hope we get, it looks already very early on that we might get treated to one of those today. And it was one of those races where they were just on and off the dismounts, the remounts, swinging the bike around. It was almost like wielding an axe when they're putting your bike on your shoulder, trying to get the sort of supremacy over their opponent. The thing we've got to look at here, though, is Alpes and De Koenig have got 3 riders in the top 4 here.
Yeah, but are these other 2 riders going to be able to come back and make a difference? Sure, if one of them makes a mistake at the front of the race, but they're playing about at this point. Neither of these 2 riders are laying everything down on the line. They're just playing about, and they've already got a gap. So I don't think the other 2 are going to be making much difference to the race right now.
And you get this long shot, you're seeing the body movements of Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel. Mathieu just looks like he's settling in here. He's got that look of sort of cool calmness on his face. Wout van Aert never gives anything away visually.
No, I don't think either of them really do. And I mean, the World Championships in Hoogerheide last season were absolutely insane. They just kept throwing punches at each other the entire time. They just kept powering, attacking, and they could not make a difference. And it ended up in a sprint to the line. And that is how these 2 riders ride and race. And they don't hold back, which is a really good thing, because if they held back and then just waited and waited, then you'd see different style of racing. But it's the way that they attack each other all the time during the race, in the middle of the race, that makes it really exciting to watch.
If you're just joining us, welcome aboard. It is the Zilvermeer Cross here in Mol, and Mathieu van der Poel, Wout van Aert leading from Quentin Hermans, Niels van der Putte, Toon van den Bos in the green and white and red colours there of Creel and Corendon. here for the second lap. Van Aert managing to ride that section, but has to get a bit of assistance from the barriers at the side. Toon van den Bosch here, making good inroads into that gap of the two riders just ahead of him. Van der Poel manages to ride that one, just finds his way through. Welcome back if you're rejoining us on the TV. We are in Mol today, in the Antwerp region of Belgium, for the Exact Cross. If you're new to this one, it's a series of races brought together under one sponsor. No general classification, but some really historic and important cross races, and this Zilvermeer Cross around the leisure facility. The lake that you have here, the swimming lake, is one that has just grown in stature and importance over the years. Klaas van Toornout taking it in 2013. Wout van Aert back-to-back wins in 14-15. Mathieu van der Poel in 2016. His brother, David. We'll just get a little replay there.
Watching this again, you can actually see that Wout van Aert has just shown a weakness to Mathieu van der Poel, because he wasn't able to make it up that bank, and Van der Poel, even behind him, was able to make it up the bank and go around him. And Van der Poel's going to be thinking, right, that's one spot, I've got that, that's not a problem.
It's the way he just kind of shimmied through. It was nicely done.
And they can't show weaknesses to each other, because that's when they really just brutally attack each other in those places.
Yes, show no weakness between the two of these. They've been, we've been treated to many a battle between Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel over the years. I was having a little look back in the week of the sort of head-to-head between Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel. So our friends over at Cyclocross 24, it's 120 to Mathieu van der Poel, 60 to Wout van Aert. So 120-60 if you put them sort of head-to-head between the two of them. Most of the time they've been first and second. There's been the odd DNF in there and the odd sort of top 10 for them. But Mathieu has the advantage over the two of them. And as we said, for anyone that's new to cyclocross, they've been doing battle since they were probably 12, I think, over the years.
Maybe a little older, but yeah, definitely since junior ranks. Definitely, yeah. And you know, they know each other very well. They've grown up in the sport very well. They've taken different career paths, but they've very much ended up racing each other on road and cross for the win in big races like Tour of Flanders and things like that, and in cyclocross world championships every year. So yes, they absolutely know each other very well, and they know how the other one thinks. I would say mentally, Mathieu isn't quite... He will throw his toys out of the pram sooner than Wout will, but Mathieu has huge confidence, whereas Wout doesn't seem to quite as much.
Our laps, Mathieu van der Poel for 5:54.609 are our lap times so far as Gianni Vermeers goes through, the world gravel champion. Quentin Hermans has got back on here. He did a 6:07 for that lap. Niels van der Putter a 6:15. Then we go back to Vincent Bastons, Anton Ferdinand, Tom Meyussen in there as well for the Lotto Exo Athletes for Hope team. Arne Vrachten going through. Wout Janssen next with Sander de Vet. So they're outside the top 10. Arne Vrachten rounding out our top 10. So good to see the likes of Tom Meyussen in that top 10. Quentin Hermans getting on here.
Mewson is a good sand rider as well, and he's also from this area, so he's probably trained on this for like every day of his life since birth or something. But he's a really good sand rider, so for him to be up there in this kind of race, you would expect that. It's like we explained that a lot of the riders, because of the Christmas block, a lot of the riders are picking the races where they want to get good training or racing experience. I mean, for these two, it's probably a combination of start money. They get paid incredible start money in these races in Belgium, but it's also a combination of wanting to compete against each other without the distraction of the World Cup or the Super Prestige or something like that, where there's other battles going on within the races. Whereas for these two, this is a race where they're just going to test out each other and see who's going strong, what they need to improve on for themselves, what that person is better at. And so this is a good test for them. And a lot of the riders, historically, Mole hasn't been a really important race for the professional riders over the Christmas block. And so it's more World Cup, Super Prestige, X2O Bag Camera Trophy are the three important series for the Belgian and Dutch riders. And so they will put more of a focus on that. And you cannot do every race over Christmas. There's something like 11 races in 16 days, and you just cannot do it. You'll physically not be able to get out of bed after about 8 days.
I know, I'm all in for most of them. I think the GP Sven Nace on New Year's Day, the only one I'm not here for. So honestly, I've been training really hard for this one. I've been out every day doing my efforts in the sand, some hill sprints, all that. So we're here as well.
But look how closely these guys follow each other's wheel. Like, wow, it's so confident in following Mathieu that he will ride within an inch of his back wheel, knowing that that's where he has to be, because if he isn't, then Mathieu's going to get a small gap like he has here, because he was able to ride a section that Wout wasn't.
And you saw it in the sand as well. Wout had to just sort of move off his line in the sand, and Van der Poel rides that section. He's managing to just open up some small gaps here, so Van der Poel just throwing those little jabs, and he knows he can ride this section beautifully up there, carries great speed. Van Aert does the same this time. We're on lap 3 of 10 here, and Mathieu van der Poel is starting to make those moves here, and just forcing Wout van Aert to make those efforts to try and come back to him. So these are the first glimmers now, Helen, of some moves here from Van der Poel.
This is what we saw in the last lap. He showed Van der Poel a weakness. I didn't successfully achieve that hill last time. So, sorry, Matthew's saying Wout didn't successfully achieve that hill last time, so that's why I'm going to try and make a move on him next time and make him hurt. Even if he comes back, at least he's had to burn his matches, not me.
And you can see just how big the crowds are here. The draw of both Mathieu van der Poel, Wout van Aert, and Van der Poel looks like he's just carrying just a little bit more speed along this sand section over Wout van Aert. So you're going to have to burn some matches here, Wout van Aert, to try and come back to Mathieu van der Poel if he can. But this is just the way these guys are just riding this June here. It's just something to behold. Hermans has to dab the right foot there and a hand sling off that one, but just a beautiful line.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And we know Mathieu is an expert sand rider alongside all his other expert skills, because he's won Coxsider and he's been able to ride some dune sections that no other rider in the history of Coxsider have able to ride. And Coxsider's been on the planet since the beginning in Belgium. And so for him to be able to ride up these banks that no other professional rider has ever ridden, and he one lap 1 year in Coxsider 2019 when he was just winning by a large margin. There was no one close to him. He was just trying out how he could ride stuff in the race, like it was like a training session, and it was insane, the stuff that he could ride. It's just a combination of technique and power that's just unheard of.
Some really nice slow-mos here of the world champion. And he has said, hasn't he, that he is chasing that cyclocross world championship record. That's the thing that's keeping him in the sport.
Is it? Right.
Yeah,
how many is he away from it? 2?
It's not far away from it now. It's just that the last one. It's because they're always sort of saying, are you going to stay in cyclocross? Are you how long are you going to stay with it? And he is. He's just chasing that record.
Well, he'll get it for sure.
Yeah, so seven for De Vlaming, isn't it? That he's got, and Mathieu is, so he's 2 off that one. So Eric De Vlaming is the record holder with 7, and Mathieu is chasing that.
Wow, yeah. I mean, you can see the way that Matthew's riding these corners. He turns in slightly sooner than Wout, and he's very slightly more jumpy. He can he has slightly more explosive power, and whereas Wout has this incredible turbo engine that he can just ride and ride and ride. And Van der Poel sometimes goes too much into that explosive power, and then that's when Wout comes back to him. Or Wout can be more consistent because Mathieu might make a silly mistake. So we saw him do even on the highlights from the first race he did this season, because he was way ahead of everyone else and he took a corner too quick and slid out. So it's kind of the way that they ride is quite different, but it's amazing how closely matched they are. And it seems like Mathieu has come back in with a bit more cross form potentially than Wout has. Or it's just, I mean, he is a really good sand rider, to be fair.
At Deegan. I don't know if we will get any pictures of that, but if you don't know Average Rob, he's a very famous YouTuber. Mathieu Van der Poel is always doing videos with Average Rob. And they're really, really funny. They're a great pair. So it's going to be interesting to see if we get to see that at Deegan. I think when you look at this, and you know, we both commentated many Mathieu Van der Poel wins over the years. It's the way he can take half a second or a second just through one corner. We saw that bank section. It was, you know, 5 meters on one section, 5 meters on it, and that's consistently his way, isn't it? It's half a second on this corner. He is on every single corner. I mean, if you add them up, if it's 20 corners a lap, that's out, you know, how much time he's taking. And a little glance down at the bike there as he picked that up.
Well, he's running. Oh, it's gone on to chains come off.
That's what we always say about cyclocross. Mathieu Van der Poel has an issue, chain off. It was just the way he looked down at the bike there when he dropped up to the bottom of that section.
Yeah, and that section we saw him ride last time, so obviously it happened and he jumped off because he heard or felt something not be quite right. I'm going to see.
Let's have a look.
Oh, he caught it with his foot.
Yeah. The pet crank just spun back.
Yeah, he caught it with his foot and spun the cranks back. And I mean, quite often in sand, in sand and dry earth, it gets all in your chain and everything, and it gets a bit grindy and things like that. And they're not going to change bikes in this course because the pits are in the sand, and you're not going to get off in sand to change unless you're already running. And so you can get quite sandy and quite gritty in there, but hopefully that was just user error because he kicked it with his foot.
As we said, the battle, remember 2016, Wout van Aert caught, as he always does, sort of spun his pedals back as he shouldered his bike, and the chain came off there. Didn't he? That's bank section though, up and down. He's definitely sort of riding that a couple of seconds quicker than Wout van Aert, even with that issue, and he's lapping riders already.
Yeah, he's tighter on those corners, which mean that he's able to put his power down quicker. And because he's got slightly more explosive power, he can actually get away quicker as well, and that's where you're going to gain those seconds. And I mean, it must be tough when you're running through the sand and you're getting lapped by somebody that's just riding past you.
So we are on lap 4 of 10, a 5:54, a 6:09, and a 5:45 with the laps for Mathieu Van der Poel so far. So that 5:45 lap, that was on lap 3, giving him that advantage. Wout van Aert was at 11 seconds the last check that we had. 5:54, 6:09, 5:56. The lap times for Wout van Aert. Behind them, Quentin Hermans is not far away, not a million miles away. 5:57, 6:07, and 6:01 for Quentin Hermans. I'll just run you through at the end of the lap, we had Tom van der Mosch at 4th, Niels van der Poel to 5th, Yanni Vermeers, Wout Janssen, Tom Meeuwsen, Anton Ferdinand, and Vincent Bastans was your top 10. If you back up to the front of the race, though, and it's Alpecin de Koenig's Mathieu Van der Poel, the world champion that is leading in this race in Mol. And the battle between Wout van Aert and Mathieu Van der Poel as he comes around for the end of the lap. So cool, so calm at the end of lap 4. We'll see how much that unshipped chain has cost him. Not a huge amount. He's about to take the corner at the end of the start-finish straight. Look at that. Tom Meeuwsen We always called him the Iceman, but he is a sand man as well. That was something else there.
Yeah, definitely. And it looks like the riders behind are getting a little bit closer to Wout on this section. Maybe Wout's just not quite enjoying it today, or because Matthew's already got a gap and he doesn't feel he can close it, he's going to try and save himself for the World Cup in Antwerp tomorrow. Again, another sand race. Who knows?
The first of many races over the course of the Christmas period. So as we were this a little bit earlier on, I'll just repeat so you know where we are. So Antwerp tomorrow, Havre on the 26th of December, Boxing Day. Havre then the 27th, Houston-Zolder, the Super Prestige Learnhout on the 20th, and then Hulst on the 30th. We kick off 2024 at the GP Sven-Nys in Basel. Gianni Vermeers goes through at the end of the lap. Quick check of the watch as Vermeers goes through. Wout van Aert, second spot. Does look like he's just sort of riding within himself now. Just as you said, Helen, perhaps a little eye on the races in front of him, and then you're almost hoping that you get those unforced errors ahead of you as well that we just saw with the unshipped chain on that last lap.
Yeah, but look at the way that Mathieu van der Poel is just surfing across the sand on his bike. Like, the bike goes wherever it wants to go and he just follows it and drives it forwards. He is a really, really incredible sand rider, and you know, even Wout makes it look incredibly impressive, but Mathieu just seems to have just a little bit of an edge in this race today, and probably Wout sees that and he's like, okay, well, there's another 9 of these races, so let's just chill, take second spot. It doesn't matter if you're second by half a meter or, you know, 500 meters. It's second is second, isn't it?
It is, and this battle for the podium is an interesting one. So 2 members of the Alpecin-Deceuninck team in Quentin Hermans on the front, Niels van der Putter on the back, and Toon van der Bos in the middle of the group here. This is a good group. Van der Bos now attacking over the top of Quentin Hermans on the sand.
It's a good place to attack because you're coming into a couple of little tricky sections, and if you can make the people behind make a mistake, then you can then attack again. But I mean, Hermans is just holding that wheel super tight as well.
Van der Putter just sitting on the back. Alpecin-Deceuninck having a good day out today. Come to this June that Van der Poel has just nailed repeatedly throughout this race. This has been one of the sections of the course that's perhaps not been Wout van Aert's favourite throughout this race so far. Van der Poel really the only rider that's consistently riding these bank sections.
Yeah, and Van Aert is just not quite getting that turn point right and that acceleration point right on that section. And I mean, now he's riding this bank, whereas on that second lap, that was where he didn't ride it and Mathieu rode past him. And so sometimes in sand particularly, it takes a long time to remember those skills if that's not naturally where you come from. And you always see videos of Mathieu van der Poel doing figure of eights on the beaches or when he's on training camps and stuff like that. So I'm fairly sure that he practices his sand skills more than Wout van Aert would on a road training camp with the rest of his team in November. I'm pretty sure that Mathieu has the freedom to be able to go and do some cross-training in the sand, whereas Wout probably doesn't have quite as much freedom to do that.
Long shot here, and both riders 1 from 1 so far. And this is why we saw Wout van Aert in Essen, wasn't it? Because he felt that he needed maybe one race before his Jumbo-Visma training camp to get that cross groove again. But it's just such different races today. I mean, Essen was just an absolute mudfest.
Yeah, and we saw even in those highlights he was making a few mistakes. And it does take some, even for the very, very best riders. Like Pidcock said in the interview of his second race back, that he didn't anticipate being so cross-ready so quickly. He didn't anticipate his skills coming back so quickly. And so these riders, even though they are the very best in the world, they still need to take a few races to get back into the rhythm of cross, and how your brain has to think. Because in road racing, your brain is thinking at certain points, but in cross, your brain has to be thinking the whole time about your gears, about the corners, about where you want to be on the exit to the corners, about what obstacles, where you have to get up, get off. And your gears the whole time is for every obstacle. So it's, what gear do I need for the next corner? What gear do I need when I remount my bike? What gear do I need coming out of this corner? What gear do I need? And it's just constant thinking. And that's tough to do when you know, 195 heart rate.
Because, we look at Mathieu van der Poel out in the lead, and then they always say at the end of these races, you made that look easy, but it's not, because he's still riding his heart rate through the roof as well.
Oh yeah, they're not taking it easy. There are a couple of laps where they'll watch each other, but they're not. Even then, they're going far faster than a normal human being can ride.
Wout van Aert goes through the line at 27 seconds ahead of the battle for the podium, which at the moment is between Toon van der Bos and Quentin Hermans, with Niels van der Putten not far away. 5:46 that lap for Mathieu van der Poel. So he's been very, very consistent so far. Only that previous lap, the time lost from the unshipped chain, but 5:46 lap in this very sandy cross here in Mol.
Yeah, they're really fast laps actually. They're not short particularly, but I think with all these sections being so hard packed, there's quite a bit of road, and the sand is very much rideable, whereas in previous seasons you've seen a lot of sand that isn't rideable at all, and running is obviously slower, so the course just seems to be particularly short this year.
And tyre choice between this one today, as we see Mathieu just hopping up over that pathway. In terms of tyre choice, is it one of those where you don't want to go too heavy with your tread because the sand kind of gets sucked up into it?
Yeah. You want the file tread, the tread with absolutely minimum grip. You don't need any grip on this course. There's no sections where you need it. The banks and things are dry earth and sand. So everything is sand, and so you want a lower pressure, so it's quite soft, so you get a good surface area, and you want zero sidewall traction, because then it's like Velcro when you ride through the sand. So you want zero of that, and you want them. Everyone will be on a file tread today. There's not a section I've seen on this course where you'd want anything of any kind of grip. So yeah, they've all. If you live in Belgium, you have these sand tyres. There is actually a sand tyre called the Dune, which is even less traction than a file tread. But you will have like a file tread option. And if you didn't, you might ride a Griffo, which is an intermediate tread. But that's only because that's all you have in your camper, not because through choice.
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, it's Mathieu van der Poel that is coming out on top at the moment in the battle with his long-time rival here, Wout van Aert. 27 seconds it was at the end of the lap. 48. Van der Poel back to the battle for the podium, which is Toon van der Bos and Alpecin de Koning teammate here, Quentin Hermans, in the blue on the back with Niels van der Putten. Not far away, he'd lost 7 seconds at Van der Putten, with Gianni Vermeers at 1:44. So Alpecin de Koning having a good day out. Good to see Gianni Vermeers back up in the top 10. We saw Anton Ferdinand of de Schachtens Mas Containers going through in 7th. Tom Meyussen in 8th. Sander de Vet in 9th, and Jarno Bellens rounding out our top 10. So some really good top 10s today. Good to see Gianni Vermeers back in the top 10, and also Tom Meyussen still riding high in 8th.
Yeah, what are we watching here? Something on his back. Oh, gel. They've all taken to using gels in the races. It seems this year particularly more than others. And there's a big load of research in the minute about carbs in racing and in competition. Whereas in the past, a lot of tour riders and things have gone away from heavy on carbs, and now they're coming back into it. But you can actually stimulate your body to use more energy with a carbohydrate rinse in your mouth, which is basically a gel. Rather than the actual gel going into your system, it actually stimulates your body to work harder.
As you said, there's a huge amount of research going on at the moment, as there always is. It's a constantly evolving thing, isn't it, sports science, and all of the teams put so much research in research and development into that.
You know, the sugar hit that you're going to get from a gel after about 20 minutes is at the end of the race when you've got a bit of a dip in your energy anyway, so you're going to get it in the last lap. And that's helpful. You only have a certain amount of glycogen in your body, and you use it up in cross races, because not because of the endurance but because of the intensity. So yeah, it's really interesting. Nutrition is a fascinating subject, and obviously I'm no expert. I was a bike racer. But
did you just eat what you were told?
I had a sports nutritionist, and I took his advice to the latter. He did allow me M&Ms in my diet, which was very good of him. He was a kind sports nutritionist, but all his advice was around preloading in races, caffeine, recovery between races. So not just your recovery drink after a race, but what you should eat in order to reload that glycogen for the next day, all stuff like that. He was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and a lot of the team chefs, you know, they work with the riders throughout the year, send them what they need to eat at home, and there's a lot of riders, teams have chefs that you've seen now, teams have chefs that they take out on the Tour de France and on the big races throughout the year, but a lot of those chefs, you know, so knowledgeable as well, and the nutritionists in guiding their riders sort of 365 days a year. And then there's sort of almost like personal trainers now, with the performance chef Alan Murchison from the UK is one that I know really, really well. And you know, I know Alan sort of sends the riders that he's working with, sends them pictures of all the bits that they need to buy when they're at the supermarket, and he works really, really closely with the riders and with their trainers as well. You know, it's so important.
Yeah, it's a massive thing that you can actually improve without having to train harder, and it makes you better.
Minute and 11, back to our chasing group from Mathieu van der Poel. 150 cyclocross wins. And Mathieu as well has already won 50 pro road victories on the road as well. I mean, it's such a haul, isn't it?
Yeah, like we say, he's an incredibly talented bike rider. Wout van Aert the same. There's talent and there's talent, and these riders are like the very, very best. And everyone else that we're watching right now, this group for third with Toon van der Bosch, Quinten Hermans, Niels van der Putten, are talented bike riders, but they're not the extreme cases that we only see a couple of per generation.
And the riders like Quinten Hermans and Niels van der Putten, because van der Putten races on the road with the development team of Alpecin de Koning. They've also got that program. Toon van der Bosch does the same, because he's Crelan-Corendon. He's also part of the Roodhoft setup as well, even though in the winter, as they split out into lots of different teams. But these two guys here in second and third, third and fourth rather, they race with the Alpecin de Koning development team the rest of the year.
Yeah, they're part of the dynasty. I mean, and it's great. They're providing fantastic opportunities for their riders. They're able to ride continental events. The women's team are able to ride a really high level as well, and it is road training for cyclocross riders. You can't get better than a stage race, because the stage race gives you back-to-back consistent hard efforts that will help you when it comes to the winter, as long as you're able to pick your program. If you do too many races, you'll just be exhausted. But if you're able to pick your program, which the Rudolph brothers are able to do with their teams mixed in together, then you can really target the cyclocross season well.
I did look at the power now of Niels van der Putten on this sand. Another man that races well. He really sort of found his way in the snow as well in recent years, has Niels van der Putte. Still only 23 and 24 are Niels van der Putte and Wout van Aert. Starting to pick up sort of some consistent podiums, Van der Putte now as well. So I don't think those sort of big wins are far away from him. But then all the time as well, you start to hit some form, just as Mathieu van der Poel, Wout van Aert, Tom Pidcock come back into racing.
Yeah, there was that. Did you just see there, though, that Wout has finally got that corner right? He's adjusted his speed appropriately, but he also managed to turn the corner at the right time and was able to lay the power down at the right time and got through that really nicely. And it's amazing to be able to watch these riders evolve during the race. And because Wout's on his own in second, he's not going to come back to Van der Poel. The riders behind are another 35 seconds back. They're not going to come back. So he's using it to, right, I can do this. I'm going to do this. And if I'm not able to, I'll just jump off and lose a second. But, I'm capable of this. So let's practice in this race.
And as you were saying earlier on with tyre choice today, in terms of the tread that you go for in the sand, that section of the course, you can see if you're managing to ride it, the amount of body weight management, for the want of a better word, in order to keep traction when you on that sort of section is incredible, isn't it?
So you don't actually need traction in those sections because they are like earth-coloured sand, basically. So the tyres aren't going to give you the grip that you need. You actually need to get your weight right. But the one thing that was really interesting is that you can see the tyre pressures. You can see they're running these low pressures in the sand to give them the biggest surface area, which means it's easier to ride through the sand because you can see the tyres are squishing as Wout van Aert is trying to get the power down to go up that hill. And that, it looks like mud, but it's really dry, earthy sand. And so it kind of feels more like slightly grippy sand, really, than mud. So you don't really need traction. But you do need, like you say, weight distribution.
We just saw Niels van der Putte just on that run, just rolling that chain forward. Let's see if we get a replay. I don't know if he had an issue. We're on to lap 8 of 10 as Mathieu van der Poel goes through at the end of his lap. Wout van Aert still in second spot with seeing it's about just over half a minute. But it's metronomic, Mathieu van der Poel. Lap 7, 5:46. Lap 6, 5:46. Lap 5, 5:54. Lap 4, 4:45. He had a 6:09 on lap 3 and a 5:54 on lap 2. But to be able to ride this course at the same time each lap is just incredible.
Yeah, he's clearly just riding at his threshold, and it works out at 5:45, 5:46. They are his lap times at threshold.
Yeah, he actually did a 5:42. It's just popped up on my timing. So at the end of lap 8, 5:42. So 4 seconds quicker that lap for Mathieu van der Poel. Wout van Aert going through in second. Niels van der Putte has managed to put a bit of a gap in. So got some sand on his shoulder as his teammate goes warp speed down the other side of that one. They'll just be able to glance across and catch a glimpse of that. I'm pleased to see Quentin Herman's going so well today.
Yeah, and so this is his first race back. So, yeah, to be right up there is really impressive. And, I mean, yeah, these guys, they've all been on training camps. They're all super fresh. When you start your cross season, the cross riders that race the entire season, September to February, they start their cross season with all of the speed and endurance and everything of a road rider. And then into the season, you're racing 2 times a week, sometimes a bit more, and it affects your training. So before a race you have an easy day, after a race you have an easy day. So that's 2 days in a week where you can't train. You're racing 2 days a week, so that's 4 days in a week where you're not training. So that gives you 3 training days. Whereas these road riders that are on training camps and things have been training like the cross riders do in August. And they're able to drop in with that higher level of endurance. So even for the likes of Hermans, he's able to come in without necessarily the cross skills being fresh in his brain, but he has that better level of endurance to start with, that better level of power, because he's been able to do bigger blocks of training. And that will fade during the season as well. But you always see this dip of the September to February riders around November, December time, and then they were able to go away. Everybody's basically been on training camp for 2 weeks in like the likes of Michael van Tornau, Ellie Isabert, all those kind of Lars van der Haar. They've been away training, but that won't kick into their legs until Nationals World start.
Back to our leader, Mathieu van der Poel, and the crowds, the organisers, getting the draw of two of the biggest names in cycling, in Mathieu van der Poel and Wout van Aert. And that's important as well for the cross, and important for this exact cross series to have the two big names here in this one. And you can see just how deep the crowds are on this course. That's how much of a draw they are.
Yeah, it's really popular. I guess there are sections they can't get to by the lake, but it's really popular, this course. And this is the heartland of cyclocross in Belgium, of traditional cyclocross in Belgium. You know, things, and it's really it's a sport where your heroes are within touching distance.
At some point in life, come to a cyclocross. If you get the chance firsthand, put cyclocross on your bucket list of things to come and watch. It is, Mathieu van der Poel in that rainbow jersey in a football stadium. That's the level of draw that you're riding through. On a cyclocross that he's searching for, to perhaps take that, keeps it coming back to cyclocross as well. What a season Mathieu van der Poel as well. If on the road, that's an option at some point. That world road race title in Glasgow, becoming something else. I want to say, I'm sure my notes are right. I'll have a look along. Mathieu van der Poel, that rainbow jersey, cyclocross and road titles. We said a little bit earlier on, I think.
Yes, first elite man to do it. We've had plenty of elite women.
Record that he's searching for to perhaps take that, keeps him coming back to cyclocross as well. What a season Mathieu van der Poel as well.
For the elite men,
on the road,
definitely.
That world road race title in Glasgow.
Mathieu van der Poel crashed there as well in the World Championships in the final lap.
I'm sure my notes are right. I'll have to look glance back. It's a very important clip. Cyclocross and road title. That was
it just shows a reflection on the way that he races all on the limit. And yeah, he was completely on the limit, even though he was already had like a 45-second lead. Yeah, like just for the races on his limit, he doesn't know how to not go hard. Not happened historically.
And I think that broke because we've seen about
Mathieu van der Poel crashed there as well in the World Championships on the final lap.
I think he pulls that out of Van Aert. He did. It's a very important clip, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It just shows a reflection on the way that he races all on the limit, particularly in the beginning. And yeah, he was completely on the limit, even though he was already had like a 45-second lead. I mean, they're just different riders. They just have he doesn't know how to not go hard, powers and things.
And I think
but when they're both super strong and both peaking for something, that's when we see these incredible battles. Yeah, I think so. They really rile each other on the road in certain races, that's for sure.
Well,
particularly in the beginning when they were both
his Tour de France stage when some of them have been some of the greatest attacks that I've seen.
I mean, they're just different riders, aren't they? They just have different powers and things. But when they're both super strong and both peaking for something, that's when we see.
Really, the attack that Mathieu van der Poel made in Glasgow was so similar when you look back to the Tour de France stage when some of them championships, some of the great and his attacks that I've seen. And I think when you watch the two of them ride, there's almost, as we've always said, where you see that transfer, that big ways, the skill set and the way they win on the road, sort of physiology, really, the attack that Mathieu van der Poel made in Glasgow was so similar when you look back to that, maybe that draw, that thing of just having that little bit and his, however condensed that race program last year as well. Thinking there's almost, as we've always said, that draw on the road, even skill set and the
it's also love. They love cyclocross. It's the best sport in the world. And even riders like, I remember back when I first started racing in 2000, Magnus Baxter won Paris-Roubaix, and Roger Hammond wasn't allowed to do cross, and he was allowed to do it that year for the first time in ages, properly, and he'd done maybe 10 races, and he said because of that was how he got on the podium at Paris-Roubaix. So even back then, they know that cross is really good. It's a fantastic way to train your top end in and like train your heart rate, train your power, like to really be racing top end in the winter in a short distance where you don't get cold. It's an hour. You're not going out on long road rides, but you're still getting that familiarity with racing, and you're not forgetting for 4 months what racing feels like. And it genuinely is so much fun. So much fun. And they get paid a lot of money to do it.
It is a great sport. We love it. That's why we love cyclocross. And it is great to have the big man back here and putting on an absolute show. And it's just watching the technique of, you know, you're saying the power that cross gives you, all the different, and every course is different. You've got the sand here and the power that riding through the sand gives you those.
But not only every course is different, every course can individually be different year on year. So I worked with a guy, a sports scientist, who was trying to work out pacing strategies in races, and he put power meters on our bikes and took the information from World Cups. And a repeated year, a race like Zolder, 2 years in a row, you would not see the same power files. So even the race itself produces a different style of riding based on the weather conditions, based on who's riding, based on how the rider's feeling. You know, if they're at the front of the race, your power file looks different to if you're racing for fifth, because, you know, if you're at the front in a battle, your other person changes how you race. But even on sand, which isn't as affected by the weather, we had a particularly dry year, and nobody could ride anything at Coxsider because the sand was so dry that it didn't form any ruts, and nobody could follow those ruts to get through. So any course changes year on year, and sand particularly changes lap on lap. It's that variable.
And that slow-mo that we had there of Mathieu riding through the sand, we touched on it in the women's race, of that little hover, that sort of hovering above the seat, and that in itself gives you, you know, you can see with Wout van Aert, you haven't got kind of all your weight there, that you've got to allow that bike to move around underneath you, so you have that little hover just above the seat a lot of the time to take that into account.
Yeah, and it's very intense racing as well. It's very hard racing. It's very mentally tough. It's making your brain make decisions when the blood is trying to be pumped to your muscles, and it's just such a great sport that young riders have come through the sport very well into the road racing because they're able to train for shorter distances, shorter times, not stress their bodies as much in order to be the very best. Whereas in road racing, you do need to do a lot longer distances in order to ride a race like a 250-kilometre race. Requires different training to a 1 hour cross race.
But Mathieu and Wout will quite often ride a couple 100k home after they've done a cross race.
Yeah, Van der Poel did it the year that they cancelled Coxsider because of the wind. And then him and maybe Van der Putten or someone, one of his teammates, they rode back to Holland from Coxsider, and it was about a 4-hour ride. I think they had a tailwind.
Yeah, they probably had a gale-forced 50.
Oh, it was gale-force because they had to.
An absolute treat being gifted to here, watching the world champion ride at the head of the race like this. His arch nemesis Wout van Aert behind him is having to give way to the big rival that he's had throughout his cycling career, the Jumbo-Visma rider going through here just over the minute down, minute and 5 to Mathieu van der Poel. Niels van der Putten still in third. And it does look like, Helen, that Wout did think as soon as Mathieu opened up that gap on that bank section, that tricky bank section that Wout perhaps just didn't quite have the measure of for quite a few laps. He's sort of throttled back, just kept Niels van der Putten behind him at bay. He had Quentin Hermans and Toon van der Bosch for a while, and it's just a way of sort of keeping a little bit of freshness, perhaps, because tomorrow's another day.
Yeah, and particularly over this Christmas block. And you can see he was 5 to 10 seconds slower a lap for the first couple of laps when Van der Poel went away, and the last lap he was 15 seconds slower. So he's just kind of sorry, it was only 5 seconds to last lap. But he's just kind of riding his race. He's riding the tempo that he needs to ride. He's practicing the things in order to do them successfully, which we saw him do on those banks. And he's just saving the energy for the other races that he have over the Christmas period. And just, there's no point in absolutely killing yourself to ride for second when you're a rider like Wout van Aert that is a natural winner. You only kill yourself to win. So that's basically their mentality, and he's going to get second anyway.
And we've also got to remember that they're coming back from training camp completely different. Wout van Aert did one race before he went away in training camp. Mathieu van der Poel started in Herentals. So there is that just waking the body up in a way to the cross effort again from you might have been doing, you know, 4, 5, 6 hour rides if you've been going old school on the training camp with some big hours.
Yeah, definitely. If you've not done as much racing and if you're trying to remember how it feels to put out all that top end effort, and these guys, you never quite know where they are in their training structure, because even though they love cross and they're doing cross, road is their thing right now. Road is their focus. And so you never quite know where that structure is. And obviously they love classics, and the classics will be high in their priority list. I know Wout was going to ride the Giro, was going to focus on the Giro, sorry. And so maybe their training for that are in 2 different places as well. Wout's not racing the World Championship so far. He hasn't said he is. And so his focus is very much on this intense period of cross racing. And Van der Poel wants to ride the World Championships. As we've already discussed, he wants to win another one. And so they are definitely at different places. And so maybe Mathieu is more cross ready than Wout is right now, because of Mathieu's focus is on such a big event like the World Championships in less than 6 weeks, I think.
Getting some really nice slow-mos of Mathieu van der Poel in the sand as Gianni Vermeers goes through the line. So he's still sitting in 6th spot. So Absen to Koenig, having a great day out here at the moment. That was a 5:41 for Mathieu van der Poel. We'll go back to Wout van Aert in the sand. Who manages that first section. Just see that body going left and right as you're just trying to control that bike, keep it moving forward underneath you. Van der Poel taking the steps. Even just the times today, the 5:40s, you know, Wout van Aert has been just a few seconds inside 6 minutes so far today, but it seems like it's that sort of, as we sort of say, a half second per corner, per lap.
Yeah, Van der Poel is just completely on it this lap. This race, sorry. He's just so consistent. It's really impressive to see. And like we say, he's got amazing skills, and sand is one of his favourite things. So, yeah, you would expect him to do well here.
And he is. What a day out for Mathieu van der Poel in that rainbow jersey. It's not going to be long now before we get him back into the start-finish straight. And here he is. 2 from 2 this season for the world champion. What an absolute treat, you've got to say, to see this man ride a cyclocross course like he has here in Mol today, to take the victory in the Exact Cross Series. He last won it in 2019. He also won here in 2016 in an absolute epic battle. So close between the man that will ride through in 2nd spot today, but 151 now career victories as a pro rider in cyclocross for Mathieu van der Poel. And here comes Wout van Aert, who's not far away from the start-finish straight himself, the Jumbo-Visma rider. It's going to be 2nd place for him today, and it's going to be another podium today for Niels van der Poel, who's just using the barriers along the side. No, nothing against that, is there, Helen?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, he's still got speed, so why not? Why not just use the barriers?
Yes, little hand slings. Final corner for Wout van Aert. It is going to be 2nd today for the man from Jumbo-Visma. And then he many times? How many times? Was it 180 times they've gone head-to-head? Mathieu van der Poel, Wout van Aert. Today it goes to Van der Poel, but we can bet this season that this man is gunning for victories as well. Takes second for Jumbo-Visma. Minute 16 is your time gap as Wout van Aert crosses the finish line. And then we will wait for the arrival of Niels van der Putte. Not quite as close in the end as it promised at the beginning, the battle between those. Van der Putte's got Quentin Hermans though, not far away from him now. Toon van den Bos in the background. Van der Putte's just got to be a little bit wary of the fast finish of Quentin Hermans. I think he's realised he's there now.
Yeah, I think they're not far from the finish now. The camera always makes it look shorter than it is. It's totally fine. I did actually expect a better, closer battle between Van der Poel and Van Aert. I must admit, I anticipated more from that. However, like I say, sand is probably more natural to Van der Poel, so, you know, potentially Wout needed to be slightly... needed to be at a better place than Van der Poel in order to make that battle exciting, but there's plenty more races, and when you throw in Pidcock into the mix as well, I mean, we saw Degen last year. We had the privilege of commentating that race last year, and that was epic with the three of them. So, yeah, maybe, hopefully we'll be able to see something like that soon.
Yeah, definitely. Niels van der Putte, 4th podium this year. He's had a winner, 2nd, and now 2 thirds this season. And for the Alpecin de Koenig man, Quentin Hermans behind him. Then Toon van den Bos for Creelan Corendon, 2:31 down. And Yanni Vermeers is going to be 5th. It's good to see Yanni out here smashing it today.
Yeah, another one of the riders that's come back to cross this late in the season. We like to call it late. It's pretty late, isn't it, December? And yeah, these guys are just so strong, and there is a level of muscle memory, isn't there? That, you know, you did it for whole seasons back to back to back growing up. There's going to be some form of muscle memory, but he's got a big gouge on his knee, so he's obviously crashed somewhere at some point.
Yeah, it looks like he's taken a bit of a tumble at some points. Yanni Vermeers, so the former world gravel champion for Alpecin de Koenig. And you have to throw that into the mix now as well, don't you? Managing gravel within programs as well for a lot of riders.
Yeah, absolutely. Although, I mean, Castien Nieuwendammel a road rider, won Gravel Worlds. When Gianni Vermeers was a road rider, won Gravel Worlds. So I think it's more of a road thing than a cross thing. We're used to racing like super hard for 50 minutes to an hour. We're not used to racing for 200 miles in the races in America.
Yeah. Anton Ferdinand and the Schachtrensmass, they have announced they have